No.
Welcome everybody. Today's Amud is Makos Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. We're in the Mishnah on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Please like and subscribe. We have an exciting Amud today. We're finishing the Mishnah that's talking about all the different types of chayve creases. All the different types of chayve malchus rather. So we finished with the ones that are, or some of them come from the Issa creases. We will see. So we're in the Mishnah on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, about 8-9 lines down in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says as follows. The first word in the line is Va'echel. So, told that we finished with all the Isrei Bia that give Malchus. Now the Mishnah says, Atomi she'achal es hakodesh. The first word of the line is Ella. The Mishnah says, Atomi she'achal es hakodesh. Someone that's Tome is impure and he eats kodesh, he gets Malchus. Va'bala mikdash Tome. Someone who walks into the base of Mikdash Tome, Malchus. V'hoichel chelev. Someone that eats chelev, a part of the animal called chelev. Not chalav, not milk, it's the fat that's also to eat. Chelev. V'dam, someone eats blood. V'behema chai v'oif. V'noisar, a carbon that there was leftover food from the carbon, leftover meat. You're not allowed to eat at the end of the day, after the day's over, and you eat it. You chayav malchus. Or pigel, a carbon where the kain was makar of the carbon, but he had the improper thoughts about the mokum, the zman, so it's called pigel. The carbon was posel, you're not allowed to eat it. V'tomei. Someone eats a carbon, eats tomei. V'shoichet umale b'chut. Someone that brings a carbon, he shechts it outside the base of Mikdash, or he's makar of it outside the base of Mikdash. Malchus. V'oichel, someone that eats chometz b'Pesach. Someone that eats chometz on Pesach. V'oichel v'oisem melacha b'yom HaKippurim. Someone that eats or does melacha on Yom Kippur gets Malchus. V'amafatem es hashemen. Someone that does a copy of the shemen, someone that imitates the shemen, like the shemen HaMishcha. It's talking about the shemen HaMishcha. You make shemen like the shemen HaMishcha. V'amafatem es hakteris. So you do make the same thing as the keteiros. You're not allowed to imitate the keteiros. V'asach b'shemen HaMishcha. If you bathe in the shemen HaMishcha. V'oichal nevelis treifus shkotz v'ramosim. Someone that eats nevelis treifus. The difference between a nevela and a treifa is a nevela is an animal that wasn't shechted, it just died. Treifa is an animal that was shechted, but it's got simon of its treifa. It's not kosher. Shkotz v'ramosim, types of bugs. Sheketz from the word sheketz achshenu, it's disgusting. They multiply. V'ramosim, things that crawl on the ground. Bigger bugs, smaller bugs. All these things he gets malchus for. Ochel tevel, if he eats tevel is any produce that you didn't take trumas and maises from, or maiserishan, shaloi not lot trumasai, or he eats maiserishan, you take the maiser from the tevel. He gives it to the Levi, but you didn't take truma from it. You have to take truma from the maiser before you eat it. Or maiser sheni, someone eats maiser sheni, v'hekdash shalei niftu. If you eat maiser sheni or you eat hekdash, shalei niftu, without doing a pediyo. We said you got to take it. If it's outside Yerushalayim, you have to you got to be paid there. You have to redeem it. You say if this piece of this loaf of bread is worth $10, you pay $10 to the mikdash, and then you can eat it. So you take the kama yochel min ateva v'yechayev. Now the Mishnah asks, kama yochel min ateva v'yechayev. For some reason, we'll see soon that the Mishnah focuses on the tevel. Everything else, no problem. How much tevel do you have to eat to be chayiv malchus? We'll see, because tevel is basically the only thing here that from the second it's created, it's already also to eat. Everything else has to go through some stage before. But tevel, as soon as it starts growing, as soon as the wheat starts growing, it's called tevel until you take shumas and maisros, right? So how much tevel do you have to eat to be chayiv? Reb Shimon Aimer, kol shehu, any amount of tevel. even the smallest amount, a drop, you eat a drop of tevel, yichayev. Chachamim oimrim kazayis. Chachamim say you have to eat a kazayis. Why kazayis? Because achila is a kazayis. Less than the kazayis, you're not eating anything. What do you had a grain, a tiny little drop, you get makos. You didn't. It's not called an achila. L'chayra. Omer lehen Reb Shimon. So Reb Shimon asked the chachamim, do you not agree with me? But Eichel Nevela, Eichel Nemala, it's actually, one gear says Nevela, but Eichel Nemala, if someone eats an ant, Kol Shehu, which is tiny, Shuchayev, and Rashi at the bottom he brings, so similarly any other, bug. So, do you not agree with me that someone eats an ant is Chayev Malkus? So therefore what? Reb Shimon says, even a Kol Shehu, you get Malkus for, right? And do you not agree with me that ant, which is definitely not a kazais, maybe 300 ants makes a kazais, I don't know what it is, but you not agree with me that you get malchus feeding a bug. It says Mefurish in the Torah you get malchus feeding a bug. It says Mefurish in the Torah, it's also. And the you get malchus for it, so you don't agree with me you get malchus for it. So he's trying to prove from here that you don't need to have a kazais in order to be chai. So what the Chum answer? Amrulai. Here's a famous Yisaid that it's called a barrier. The reason why ant is also to eat, you get malchus for, is because it's a barrier. Meaning it's kibriyasa. You're eating it like it was created, like it was made. Amalahen afchita achas kibriyasa. So Reb Shimon said to Ben back, what do you mean? A grain of wheat also is like it's created. That's what the machlekes l'chayra is between Reb Shimon and Chachamim. Chachamim says you need a barrier, and Reb Shimon says you need a barrier, and Chachamim say you need a barrier. Reb Shimon says, in Cain, a grain of wheat is also a barrier. So obviously you don't need a barrier, or you need a barrier, but this is also a barrier. There's two ways to understand Reb Shimon over here. So what is this din of barrier? Why is a barrier special? So Taisus explains later on in Daf Yud Zayin, we'll get that soon. Taisus says, what's a barrier? The Torah says don't eat chicken, right? Don't eat chicken. So if you have a little piece of chicken, is that called you ate a chicken? No, you ate a piece of chicken. There's a different name. This is called a piece of chicken, and that's called a chicken. To be chayiv eating a chicken, you have to eat the whole chicken. Well, chicken is a bad example because you had a chicken. Pig, right? The Torah says don't eat chazer. It means don't eat a whole chazer. If you had a little piece of chazer, you didn't eat a chazer, so you have to have a kazais to be chayiv. But when the Torah says don't eat a bug, and you eat the bug, it's less than kazais, you ate a whole bug. There's no shini Hashem. So berry means once you start eating a small amount of it, so there's no longer, sorry, we moved location, so there's you need it, it's called, there's a shini Hashem in order to be chayiv. That's how Torah is like.
Even if it's smaller than kazait.
So if it's smaller than a kazayis, you
that's
still...
only relevant when it's smaller than kazait. Because when it's bigger than kazait, it doesn't matter.
Once it's kazayis, right, exactly. Once it's kazayis, you don't need to come on to the fact that it's shin shame. You ate a kazayis of, if you eat a kazayis of chazer, you're chayiv. But if you ate less than a kazayis of chazer, so you're asking really a question, so why is eating more than a kazayis also? You still didn't eat the chazer. So the Torah doesn't want you to eating b'chlal chazer. So the shear of eating is a kazayis. When we get to places on your side, maybe we'll see that further. Rashi seems to be saying we're on the bottom of it, Gimel and Aleph in the Mishnah. So Rashi says the reason why a barrier is asa. Why is a barrier asa? Because it's a chashivas. You ate a whole cockroach. It might not be kazayis, but it's a davar chashiv. You know, you ate a luxury ant. It's something important. You ate a whole ant.
Green chocolate-covered grasshopper.
Exactly, chocolate-covered grasshopper. It's a delicious thing. You ate a whole grasshopper. It might not be a kazayis, but it's got a chashivas. So even though you, a little minuscule piece of chazer, there's no chashivas to that. That's the chayil machlekes Rashi. Rashi says it's because there's no shinei shame. Rashi says it's a chashivas. The Rashba, and this is how the Shulchan Aruch brings it also down. He says there's three conditions for something to be considered a barrier. First of all, it has to be when it's grown, like we saw in the Gemara, has to be grown, has to be asa. From the second it's grown, from the second it's created. So wheat, for example, there's nothing wrong with it. right? Or an orange, or I don't know. There's nothing. It's grown. It's mutter. But a bug, as soon as it's grown, as soon as it's born, it's already asa, right? It can't be something that is chalin afterwards. So all the hektish, chulin, pigul, tome, noisa, the issa comes afterwards. So there's no barrier there. It's only a barrier if it's born with the shame issa, right? Second thing he says is the name has to change, like Taisa says, to be, in order for it to be considered a barrier. When an ant is an ant, half an ant. You eat half an ant, it's already called half an ant. Half a piece of chazah, it's half a piece of chazah, like Taisa says. The third klal he says is that it has to have a neshama. The thing that Chacham are going to answer to Reb Shimon's kasha, Reb Shimon says, don't you agree with me that grain of wheat is also a barrier? So what's the difference between the ant and a grain of wheat? So the answer is, the Rishonim say, the ant has a neshama. It's a living organism. A grain of wheat is not a living organism, that's why it's not called a barrier. A barrier has to be something that has a neshama. A grain of rice is not called a barrier because it's a whole grain, it's chashiv. No, it's not chashiv because there's no neshama there. Only if there's a neshama is it called a barrier. Okay. For example, big nafkamina, where we said about if it grows tchilas briyasa, the Torah says that you can't eat a sheretz al adoma. That's the lashon of the Torah. You can't eat a bug that's crawling on the adoma. So a bug that's in a fruit, it was born in a fruit, that never came out of the fruit, you're allowed to eat. Midoraisa, right? It was never sheretz al adoma. It was in the fruit. So now, so that was mutter. But once it comes out, now it's already asa, right? So that question is that called a barrier or not?
But if it's created to live on the ground, it happened that
It matters. It doesn't matter what it was created for.
No, I mean, you have worm in the apple.
Yeah.
It just sits in the apple.
If it came into the apple, also, but if it was born in the apple, it's not sheretz aladoma, and mikra then is mutati midoraisa, right? And it's not called a barrier. It's not called a barrier unless it started beisa. That's the problem. Okay, that's why a lot of places you see on these frozen fruits says, you're allowed to use it ground up because you have an ant, right? It's a berry, it's osati. There's not a kazayas. Mibchinas kazayas, there's no problem with eating an ant. You didn't have a shirachila. The only problem is a barrier. You ate all barrier. So if you put it in the machine, you blend it, and it gets broken, an ant. You still have the same ant, but you have two halves of the ant. You didn't eat an ant. You ate half an ant and half an ant. So you don't have the name anymore. It's not a barrier, right? That's why they say you can use these frozen fruits for if you grind it. I don't know what the grinding helps. Some of these bugs are so small that
Because
it's not going to get ground up.
just spoke about it a
Yeah.
while ago. Yeah.
What did he say?
He said because then it's not a full bug.
Right, but is the machine blending it definitely?
No, he said a big bug,
It's going to blend.
100%. He said
Yeah.
a small teeny bug.
It's not going to
It's
blend.
not gonna blend
And therefore
100%.
what? And therefore do it anyway?
No,
Like exactly. Okay, the small teeny
I
bugs.
have to review the sugya, but
The sheet as a whole, that if it's tiny, you can't see it anyway. It's fine. This chumrah, people machmir that you can't see it, then it's. I mean, definitely you have to be able to see it for it to be also to eat.
so
Question is if you see the machlekes is if you see a dot. We all see a dot there. Now, if you hold it up in a very strong light and you look at it for 10 minutes, you'll see the dot moving, and you can deduct that it's a bug. Is that called you can see it or not? Most places can hold. I think I don't know most, but many places can hold. That's not called.
no, I think it's by naked eye mostly.
It's by naked eye, but naked eye there's a big difference where you can see naked eye in the room here or in a bright sun, exactly the right angle. You can see when the sun's bright enough, you see dust flying around the air, right? You lie in bed with the tris open a bit, you see dust particles.
when you're
you
adding
don't
so
see it.
much details, it's already astringent. Okay.
Right, exactly. So, okay. That's the machlekes, Rabbi Shimon and Chachamim. We pass on obviously like Chachamim that a barrier is asa. Not a barrier is... And like the Shulchan Aruch said, you need these three conditions for it to be considered a barrier. Says the Gemara, Chayvi krisis katani, Chayvi misas basin loy katani. The Gemara is making analysis over here. That the Isurim in the Mishnah are Chayvi krisis and not Chayvi misas basin. Again, Chayvi krisis is the things that basin doesn't give kares. Kares is min shemayim. Abisha takes care of it, right? But the Mishnah doesn't list any Isurim misas basin. Eishes Ish, I don't know, all these other Isurim which are misas based in. Michal Shabbos. It doesn't say Michal Shabbos you get Malkus for. You don't get Malkus for Michal Shabbos. According to this Mishnah, because Chil Shabbos is misas based in. Yom Tov, Yom Kippur. The Mishnah brings Yom Kippur because Yom Kippur is it's a chorus. So says the Gemara.
It's like Shabbos, yeah.
Says the Gemara. Chayv Krisa Ktani, Chayv Mrs. Based in like Ktani. The Mishnah does not bring Chayv Mrs. Based in money. So who is the author of our Mishnah? Who wrote this? Who wrote this Mishnah? Says the Gemara. Rabbi Kiva. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Kiva, the Tanya. It says in the Brisa, Chayv Krisas v'Chayv Mrs. Based in. Whether this is not Rabbi Kiva Shita, whether you do a Chayv Krisas or whether you do the Mrs. Based in. Yeshnu b'chal malchus habarim dever Rabbi Yishmael. Either way, whatever the misa is, krisas, misas based, and you get malchus. Malchus for any type of issa, which is chayv misa or krisas. Rabbi Kiva Omer chayv krisas yeshnu b'chal malchus habarim. If there's a issa kares, you get habarim. But if misas based, you don't get malchus habarim. Im also tshuva. If a guy does tshuva for issa kares. Based in Shalmala, he has a mechil in Shemayim. The guy does Issachar, he eats chametz on Pesach, he does tshuva. Based in his meichel, based in Shalmala is meichel. Chayv misas based in. But if someone does Issa misas based in, he kills someone. Eishes ish, Shabbos, Einu b'chal malchus habayim. He doesn't get malchus habayim. Why? Shemasu tshuva. Even if he does tshuva, ein based in Shalmata meichel, he has no mechila. So the Mepharshim saying, why is there no mechila if he does tshuva based on shalmata? Because we don't know if a guy did tshuva. He can sit there saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I ate on Yom Shabbos, al chait." Based on shalmata doesn't know if he did tshuva. There's a few other malchim over here, but that's the pashtus. We don't know if a guy did tshuva. You can't know. So that's the machlaikas in a nutshell. Rabbi Kiva says, Isuri kares, chayve kares, you get malchus for. Why? Because you could do tshuva and not get chorus, so he's left just with the malchus. But chayv misas based in, since based is going to give you the malchus, since based is going to give you the misa, you don't get malchus for. And there's a third opinion now. Rabbi Yitzchak Omer, chayve krisas bechlal hayu. There's a kalal about chayvi krisis. The pasuk is nichol v'nichol sekol and flushes eyes or something like that. V'loma yotzis kares b'chaysei. So why does the Torah specifically say by the issa v'chaysei, someone that takes his sister l'dunu b'kares l'dunu b'kares v'lo b'malchus? It says dafka kares by a chaysei. Tell me he gets kares and not malchus. So according to Rabbi Yitzchak, by issa kares, the pasuk says you dafka get kares and not malchus. My time. Okay, so we've got a 3 more chlaikas here. The Bitzach says you don't get malchus even by Issachars. Ask the Gemara. My timer, the Rabbi Yishmael. How does Rabbi Yishmael know this? How does Rabbi Yishmael know that you get malchus also for kares and also for misas based in? Either way, malchus. It says in the pasuk, "Im loy tishma lasis is called divrei Torah zayis." It says in the pasuk. What does the pasuk say? Imay tishma is called divrei Torah zayis. Aksuv b'zei v'zei lios Hashem anechva v'nera as Hashem elokecha. V'chsev v'pale Hashem es makoischa. It says Hashem will follow like a wonder. A pele is like a wonder. Hashem will do this. He'll give you crazy makos. So the Gemara asks, "Hafla any of their mind? What is this hafla? Hashem will give you massive punishment. What is this massive punishment?" It says in the pasuk, "V'pilu ha'shofet he'll do hafla, v'kol, and he'll give him makos. Havayim hafla zu malchus." So from here we see that hafla means malchus. When it says hafla, that means malchus. So that's how Rabbi Shmuel says, for any Issa, Kores, or Misas based in, you're going to get malchus for. And why? Because of the chsiv, in Moitish Malasis, is called V'chole. That's why he gets malchus. So Asa Gemara and Rabbi Shmuel, Ihachi, if that's the case, Chai ve'asei nami. Why davka by any lav, including Misas based in Kores, do you get malchus? What about essay? If a guy didn't shake lulav, give him malchus. A guy didn't sit in the sukkah, give him malchus. A guy didn't put on tefillin, give him malchus. So,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just trying to figure out what the question is. What the
So he learns, Rabbi Shmuel learns, it says, anytime imloi tishma lasais malchus. You didn't keep the Torah, you get malchus.
Right.
That means including kares, Mrs. Bastin, any love. The Gemara says, what about essay? Give the guy malchus if he doesn't do an essay. You didn't keep the Torah. Imloi tishma lasais. You don't do it, you get malchus.
Instead of.
Instead of nothing. Instead for an essay, you don't get malchus if you don't shake lulav. You just missed the mitzvah. You missed your chance. Why didn't you get malchus if you didn't shake lulav? Why didn't you get malchus if you didn't daven in shul this morning? So give the guy malchus. It says if you don't keep the Torah, you get hafla. You get a patch. You get malchus. How do you know you don't get malchus for an essay? The Gemara answers because it says imloi tishmar, right? Imloi tishmar is mashma only by a lois essay. We're going to see imloi tishmar kasiv. Shomer pen va'al ein elois essay. So these isurim imloi tishma lasais, it means you over love. It doesn't mean if you did an essay. So that's the mashmais of the pasuk. The mashmais of the pasuk is that he did a lois essay. So if you do any lois essay, including skila, Mrs. Bastin, kares, you get malchus for. So Gemara, Yachi. If that's true, we know there's a klal, lav shem b'maisa. You spoke lashon hara, you don't get malchus. Yachi lav shem b'maisa. Nami. A lav shem b'maisa. Someone spoke lashon hara. He lied. He did a lav without a maisa. He should also get malchus, right? Because again, his pasuk is in imloi tishma lasais. You don't keep the Torah, you get malchus. So he says, lasais ksiv. Says the pasuk, lasais. It says lasais. He has to do. He has to make an action.
Instead of not do.
If you did a maisa, it has to be active as opposed to passive. Okay. So it says Gemara, lav shenitik lasei nami. Okay, what about lav shenitik lasei? So for example, what's a lav shenitik lasei? The Torah says don't steal. You stole. You did a maisa. Give the guy malchus. And we know the lav shenitik lasei you don't get malchus for. You pay back. What's the essay? It says veishiv esakzela. Don't steal, and if you stole, give it back. Maybe you should also give him malchus then. The Gemara answers, "Dumia the lav the chasima." The issur of lav is the next line. In the next line in the Torah, it says leisachos shabbat dishai, and leisachos shabbat dishai isn't lav anitik le'asei. So therefore, every lav has to be like leisachos shabbat dishai. In order to be chayav malchus, it has to be like leisachos. The Gemara asks, "Hashad the asis la'achi." The Gemara says, "Kulu nami dumi de lav techasima." Now that you've said it has to be like lav techasima, you don't have to bring me the other drashas of lasais and the other tirutzim, because it has to be dumi de lav techasima. Lav techasima isn't nitik lasei, it's not a shei val taisei, so you don't have to come with the other tirutzim. We know klal it has to be like lav techasima, lav aveisach sum shar b'bishai. So that's how Rabbi Yishmael learns. That's the first shlav. What about Rabbi Kiva? Why did Rabbi Kiva say you only get malchus for chiv kores and not for chiv Mrs. Bastin? My time. So kedei rishosoi ksiv. It says in the pasuk kedei rishosoi. What does the pasuk say? Kedei rishosoi yakenu. Kedei rishosoi b'mispah. You give him malchus. Vayim b'nikus harasha v'pila shefet yikol lefano kedei rishosoi b'mispah. So says Rabbi Kiva, his derishis pasuk kedei rishosoi mishum risha achas ata mechayvoi. It doesn't say kedei rishoi, kedei rishosoi. It's mashma one risha. Mishum risha achas ata mechayvoi v'iyat ata mechayvoi mishum shtei rishoyes. You don't give him malchus for doing two averis. He never gets two punishments. So what? So why doesn't he get two punishments? So if this guy is going to get Mrs. Bastin, you can't give him also Marcus. One of the two. You can't give him two. So why do you give him? He's going to get chorus. So why does he get Marcus if he gets chorus? Because he said chorus he does tshuva for. If he does tshuva, he's not going to get Marcus for the chorus. He's not going to get chorus. So now you can give him Marcus. So that's why, if you're Rabbi Kiva, you do not give Malchus for Chayve Mrs. Basin, but you do give for Chayve Krisus. Asa Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel, Hani Mili Misa Mammon, a Malchus of Mammon. According to Rabbi Shmuel, when do we say you don't give two punishments? He also agrees with this pasuk Kedei Rishasai. What does he do with the drasha? Hani Mili Misa Mammon, a Malchus of Mammon. It's only when there's Mammon involved. You don't give Misa Mammon and Malchus of Mammon. About Misa Malchus, but you can't give a guy Misa Malchus, you can't beat him and then throw him off the roof. Why? You'll be happy to hear this. That's one long Misa. You start beating him up, that's already part of Misa. Hitting him is a type of Misa. So there's no problem with Kedei Rishasai. You can't be Mechayiv in Mammon and Malchus, or Mammon and Misa. That's two punishments. But Misa and Mammon, Malchus and Misa, that's all one long punishment. The Rebbe Kiva, what's he going to say? Ihachi Chayv Krisis Nami. The Rebbe Kiva Chayv Krisis Nami. By Chayv Krisis is also L'chayra. Chayv Krisis is also L'chayra, two punishments. My Amras, Shem Asa Tshuva. What are you going to tell me? He'll do Tshuva? You're going to say, the guy will do Tshuva, he won't be Chayv Kares. But at the moment, you're giving him Malchus, he didn't do Tshuva yet. Right? The guy didn't Tshuva, you're giving him Malchus. He's going to get now Malchus, and he's going to get Kares, two punishments. Hashem is Layavagi. Amar Avavo, Befeirish, Rips the Torah, Chayv Krisis Malchus. The Torah Befeirish says, the Chayv Krisis gets Malchus. And he brings a new drasha. We're going to wrap up with it. Where it says on the Gemara in Yud Zayin, I think it is. There's a Reb Chananya. Ben, where is this? According to another sheet in the Tanaim, as soon as he gets Malchus, even without Tshuva, once you get Malchus, he's parted from Kares. Now it seems to be a machlaikas, and the Gemara says that they don't argue. As soon as he gets Malchus, even without Tshuva, he's parted from Kares, even without Tshuva. The Gemara says that someone argues, and they want to say that who argues on Reb Chananya is Rebbe Kiva. He holds that you need Tshuva in order to be Mechaper the. That's what's mashma in the Gemara here. You need Tshuva in order not to get the Kares. But according to him, even without Tshuva, Malchus itself takes away the chiyuv of Kares. So now he has a different drasha. What's he saying? Amar Avavo. There's a new pasuk that says every time you chayv Kares, you get Malchus. What's his drasha? Beferish should say chayv Kares Malchus. The Gemara it says le'enei. You learn the word eini mile'einecha. In one pasuk says einei, and another pasuk says einecha with a chaf at the end. A lot of difference. So we learn, and one's talking about Kares, and one's talking about Malchus. What's the psukim? It says by erva, v'nichusu le'ene b'nei omam. You give Kares le'ene b'nei omam. He gets Kares in front of the people le'ene b'nei omam. And by Malchus it says v'nikla achicha le'enecha. When you give him Malchus, he becomes mevuza. He's mevuyash. He's disgraced le'enecha, in front of your eyes. So we learn le'ene le'enecha, Kares, Malchus. So Maskif Ravaba Mama says, what do you mean? Ihachi Chayva Mrs. Based in Nami. Nigmarem. So let's learn also Mrs. Based in. That you get Malchus. Why? Because by Mrs. Based in says Me'ene. What does it say by Mrs. Based in? Vaya im Me'ene Eden Eselishkaga also Galaida. It says Me'ene. So let's learn out Me'ene from Le'necha and give him Malchus also. You tell me V'nikla Le'necha, you get Malchus. It says Me'ene by Mrs. Based in. Let's say that Me'ene from Mileinecha. The Gemara answers, nah, don't in Le'ene Mileinecha, because there's one letter difference. Eine Einecha. Then done in Me'ene Mileinecha, where there's two letters difference. There's an actual letter at the beginning, a lamed and a chaf at the end. So ask the Gemara, mine have kimina. Who cares if there's an actual letter? V'atana the Rabbi Shmuel. It says in Rabbi Shmuel says v'shavakain or barkain. One time it says v'shavakain. One time it says a barkain. Zui Shiva, Zui Bia, it's the same thing, Shavaka and Bakin, even though it's totally different letters, but it means the same thing, so we can learn that one from the other. That's one kasha. V'aid, another kasha. Ligma me'ene milenecha, let's learn that. Me'ene mileene. Doha gama le'ene milenecha. Since we know now le'ene milenecha, now we can learn out me'ene from le'ene. So you don't have to go directly. You could skip. You could go to the middle one. You learn out A to B and B to C. Just learn out, instead of learning B to A and C to A, you can't learn out C to A, but you can learn out C to B. Once we've learned out B, we can learn C to B. Okay?
Okay.
So Gemara answers. We'll finish over here. Kibbutz Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak. Here's Makabel. Kedei Rishasei B'Shem Rishachas Mechayvai V'Yet Mechayvai Shtei Rishuyos. When it says you give him one risha, that's only by the risha Masoila Basin and Kosim Medaber. That means Basin doesn't give him two einshim. You're right. If you can get two einshim, the guy can get malchus and karis, no problem. The problem is getting Basin can't give a guy two einshim. That's what we learn at Kedei Rishasei. Shkayach, have a wonderful day.